March 26th, 10 cards revealed today for the Witchwood expansion, including the new Shaman hero card, so let's go. First up is Houndmaster Shaw, 4 mana 3/6 hunter legendary that gives your other minions rush when out on the board. So it's like Tundra Rhino, cheaper, better statted, and works with more than just beasts, but it also gives minions rush instead of charge. The minion itself doesn't have rush, and you can only put one in your deck. Only having to spend 4 mana means you can play some other decent minions on the same turn. It easily combos with poison minions for removal, Deathrattle for more instant value, and overall can help hunters take control of the board. My biggest concern is if a hunter deck can support this card. Definitely doesn't work in Spell Hunter, but maybe a mid-range hunter could use this to swing the board in their favor. One big thing this card has going for it is it's a well-statted and costed card. Hunter could use a good 4-drop, and 4 mana 3/6 is decent, even if you're only able to give rush to one other minion on that turn. The card not only has a powerful board effect, but also a 3/6 is a pretty tough stat line to get rid of. If your opponent has to use a powerful resource to get rid of this card, or they choose to leave it on the board for more than one turn, then this card could be good in almost any hunter deck. Houndmaster is a really good legendary for hunter, just let that sink in for a little bit. And it even works in a Gen deck. Please acknowledge the pun there. But I don't think there's going to be that great deck for this card, at least this expansion. Next up is Nightmare Amalgam, 3 mana 3/4 neutral, all minion. This is an elemental, mech, demon, murloc, dragon, beast, pirate, and totem. I'm still waiting for Egg to become an official tribe, but when it does, I expect Nightmare Amalgam to join Eggs as well. So I've seen quite a few fan-made cards like this one, minions that count as all of the tribes, and I kinda like it. If you can pick it in Arena, it usually means the stats are decent enough to mess around with in Standard. Not only can this card activate any tribe-specific synergies in your hand or on the board, but it also can be one of the tribe-specific minions you can get. This counts as a Murloc for Megafin, a Demon for Bloodreaver Gul'dan, Beast for Build-A-Beast. Wait, actually, no, Build-A-Beast still doesn't work how they say it will, but... Now, is Nightmare Amalgam good? Not really. In fact, I sort of wish it was a rare or common, because I think for the most part, people really won't want to open this card for a pack. But if you have a deck like Dragon Priest, who's losing a lot of really good dragons, will substituting Nightmare Amalgam save the deck? No. But if you have a deck that's just 1 or 2 tribe-specific minions away from working out, could this card make the deck work? Absolutely. It should be the last resort and the weakest tribe synergy in your deck, but I don't think it's necessarily going to kill you if you put it in your deck. I think my favorite part about this card is it's a creative, fun, and not completely useless or boring design for a neutral card. It kinda sucks that Blizzard has a quota of a certain number of cards they print for each expansion. Really, a lot of the throwaway, least played, and least powerful minions are neutral. But when they can actually make these cards interesting, like Nightmare Amalgam, and not just expansion fillers, it makes the entire set feel like a better product. Next up, I'm going to be looking at 2 Druid cards, Witchwood Apple and Whispering Woods. Apple is a 2 mana spell that adds 3 2 mana 2/2 treants to your hand, and Whispering Woods summons a 1/1 Wisp for each card in your hand. So with these 2 cards, it looks like they're going in the direction of a hand druid. Some sort of druid that tries to hold on to a lot of cards in their hands is an interesting idea. We know from Jade Druid, which is luckily rotating out, that Druid has acquired quite a bit of draw. Combine this with the already card-holding decks like Big Druid, and you can see where this sort of deck could start to form. On an individual card level, Witchwood Apple is a peculiar card. If you're playing a Big Druid, you're either trying to ramp up or hero power and pass in those early turns, because all of your minions are too expensive to play. Druid is going to lose some ramp and barns, so it's going to be even tougher in the early game for this Big Druid deck. Maybe Witchwood Apple is a way to spend that early wasted mana to contest on the board in the more early game, while also maintaining a handful of cards. Looking at Whispering Woods, I actually think this card is a really creative board fill. First, to get the maximum value, you want to have 8 cards, including Whispering Woods, and I think this is a pretty decent requirement. It makes you plan out turns before playing this card. On top of this, it's not like a board of 1/1s is anything too intimidating, but when you combo it with the plethora of board buffs Druid has, both cheap and expensive, you can see how this card could be a pretty good combo piece. Now, do I think these cards will see play? For Witchwood Apple, I don't think a Big Druid is going to work this next expansion, and Whispering Woods might work in an aggro board buff, but it requires a handful of cards. If these 2 cards were to work in a hand Druid deck like Blizzard is hinting at, then I think the deck needs a big boost. It needs a better incentive besides just Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant, so it's my prediction that Blizzard is going to print a Druid Legendary for this type of deck, and I think this will help show us if this deck can actually be a thing, and if Witchwood Apple and Whispering Woods will see play. Next up is Glinda Crowskin, 6 mana 3/7 Warlock legendary that reads, minions in your hand have Echo. So when Glinda is out on the board, you can play any of your minions as many times as you want in a turn. As an example, on turn 10 you can play Glinda and 4 Kobold Librarians, all of this with just 2 cards and 10 mana. At 6 mana, Glinda is going to be hard to combo with effectively. I think it works well on the same turn as being played with small minions, but do you really think a big board threat like this at just a 3/7 stat line is going to survive another turn? It's going to be rare for Glinda to survive more than one turn, where you can echo summoning portals and play a bunch of Leroys or Voidlords. I mean, Blizzard designed this card to hopefully not be broken, and I think making it a weak statted 6 minion is the best way to do that. It's a creative use for Echo, but I think its ability is so strong that they kind of had to make it unplayable. Don't get me wrong, this card is pretty flexible and there are a lot of fun cheap cards this can combo with, but it's just not going to be better than anything Warlock has right now. You guys will have to let me know if there's a minion I'm not thinking of that would be crazy with Echo and Warlock. Next up is Vivid Nightmare, 3 mana priest spell that reads, choose a friendly minion, summon a copy of it with 1 health remaining. So health remaining means it's a damaged minion. So with a minion like Obsidian Statue, you would respawn a damaged 4/1 and you could use something like Binding Heal and your hero power to restore it to full health. There's a decent number of minions you could use with this card. Obsidian Statue, Prophet Velen, Lyra, the Lich King, probably many more. It really could work at just any big priest if that's still going to be a thing. Still, it's a little bit of a clunky card. It's not like a Mage's Molten Reflection, which can work on any big minion to get a lot of value. It's more selective in the value it can get from a minion. Maybe using Vivid Nightmare on Radiant Elementals can start a crazy cheap spell combo and bring back Shadow Reaper Anduin? I don't see any immediate overpowered advantage to this card, or at least any combo as good as Quest Mages. I just think it's going to be either a combo piece or a fringe spell that doesn't really see any play. Probably the latter. Next is Rebuke, 2 mana paladin spell that makes enemy spells cost 5 more next turn. Powerful effect, but there's a lot of problems with this card. First off, it's pretty situational. Yes, almost every deck has spells, and this card would be hilarious against Spell Hunter, and you can even save this card for certain turns you know your opponent will want to play their powerful spells, like Ultimate Infestation, but it's still super situational. The only real way I see this card being played is if there's a reason to tech against a spell-related deck. Maybe Rebuke can prevent your opponent from completing a combo, but there has to be enough games against this combo deck where this acts like a useful tech card. Otherwise, it's just a 2 mana inconvenience your opponent spell that takes up 1 or 2 deck slots as opposed to some better card. I don't think it's going to see play. Next up is Rotten Applebomb, 5 mana 4/5 neutral with Taunt and Deathrattle, restore 4 health to your hero. Now, in the reveal video, they talked about how it's sort of like a combo between the Wild Minions, Sludge Belcher, and Anti-Keelbot, and I agree with that to a point. This is definitely an anti-aggro card. By turn 5, you've probably taken a couple hits to face, so I think against aggro matchups, you're going to get that 4 heal value. Stat-wise, it's decent, I suppose. The 5 health with the Taunt means you're actually healing for 9 if your opponent has to sink damage into this taunt, and the 4 attack means if your opponent has to trade their minions in, Applebomb is probably going to kill them. I think what's great about Sludge Belcher is just how annoying the Deathrattle is. We've learned from Voidlord that being able to summon a taunt right after you've just killed one is a pretty good way to slow down the game, and kind of annoying. A Deathrattle that summons a taunt can sometimes save even more health than Rotten Applebomb can, because your opponent has to deal the 9 damage into killing the first 2 targets instead of just the one that heals you for 4. Basically, having another thing in the way is sometimes better than just healing for 4. I think this card will really only work in a super aggressive meta, maybe a mid-range or control deck that needs to tech against crazy aggro decks. I don't really see this aggro being too much of a problem, and I doubt Rotten Applebomb will be the first choice to counter it, so I don't think it's going to see play. And last up we have Witch's Apprentice, 1 mana 0/1 Shaman Beast with Taunt and Battlecry, add a random Shaman spell to your hand. So this is the new Babbling book, and I have to say, it's really not as good. Getting cards and value is always nice. The 0/1 taunt stats are worse than a 1/1, but maybe it will save a little bit of life. At least it's a good target for cryostasis, but more on that later. But I think focusing more on the Battlecry, Shaman has some really good spells like Volcano, Bloodlust, Healing Rain, but they also have some insanely bad spells like Ice Fishing, Totemic Might, and yes, cryostasis. It's not necessarily that these are all bad spells, but rather super situational. Shaman spells are all over the place. Some work with murlocs, others with totems, control decks, aggro decks. Not only are a lot of these shaman spells low value and have annoying overload, but they can also have an even lower impact if you don't build your deck around them. And that's why I think getting a random shaman spell isn't really a reliable source of value, even for just 1 mana. But what if every minion gave you a random shaman spell? I present to you Hagatha the Witch, the only hero card for this expansion, 8 mana shaman legendary with the Battlecry, deal 3 damage to all minions. But what's really interesting is the passive hero power Bewitched, where after you play a minion, add a random shaman spell to your hand. So this is taking Babbling Book and Witch's Apprentice to the next level. We talked about how the shaman spells are a little risky, but when you increase your odds from just getting 1 spell from a 1-drop minion to all minions in your deck, you increase your chances of actually getting useful shaman spells. Now this isn't going to be for all of your minions, because you still need to draw and play Hagatha before you start getting spells from playing minions. If you can play the hero card turn 8, then you shouldn't have an empty hand for the rest of the game, but if you draw Hagatha towards the end of the deck, then don't expect to outvalue your opponent. I think this is going to be a tough card to build a deck around. You can play a tempo deck with mostly minions, but you still probably want to include some of those powerful shaman spells. You can use Hagatha to get more value against control matchups, but you also need a deck that can survive against aggro. On top of the card's struggles, gameplay wise, I'm not sure if I absolutely love the idea of this hero power. I guess I'm just not sure if a deck built around this card is going to be fun or not. I don't know if the random shaman spells are just going to be annoying after a while, or if they're going to encourage playing some unique spells like Cryostasis. Maybe the two aren't mutually exclusive. But if I had to make a guess, this is what I think is going to happen with Hagatha. This first expansion of the year, the Witchwood, Hagatha is not going to work out. Too many bad spells in the class and not enough good minions to support this. But then at some point before the card rotates out, Blizzard's going to print the cards that will tip the scale and make a pool of random shaman spells worth randomly collecting from. On top of this, there's going to be a strong enough minion base to support shaman, and for one expansion this will be up there with some of the top tier decks. I think the gameplay is going to kind of get old after one expansion, and after it loses some cards, it's going to fall off or rotate out. I'm not jumping for joy with this card, but I still think it's going to be fun this expansion. That's all the cards for today. The 24-hour cycle of community reveals have started, so I'm going to try to put out a video with the day's cards around the same time. If you want notifications when I put out a video, then you can subscribe and hit the little bell. I meant to put out a season finale to the top custom Hearthstone cards of the week yesterday, but I'm going to be pretty busy now with these showcases. I don't usually do this, and it's a bit douchey, but I kind of don't want to edit that video, so if y'all really want to see the last top custom Hearthstone cards of the week before I take a break from that series, then I'm going to ask you if you can get this video to 4,000 likes. If we get that many likes, then I'll put out the custom cards video before the end of the week. It's fine, I'm just extorting the people who like that series to help this video out. But also, seriously, many thanks to the support for all of my videos. I'll be back with more Witchwood cards next time, but until then, ta-ta.
That's nice.